It started with a whisper. Not a scream. Not a siren. Just a whisper, barely audible over the 911 line. Something's wrong. There's someone here who shouldn't be. That was all the dispatcher heard before the call dropped. The address? A sprawling $13.5 million estate in Brentwood, Los Angeles. Home to one of Hollywood's most respected figures, Rob Reiner. Director, actor, political activist. A man who, for nearly 5 decades, stood as a pillar of integrity and cultural conscience. But before we continue, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. His wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, producer, philanthropist, partner in everything, was known for her quiet power and fierce loyalty. Both of them would be dead within the hour. And now, their sons are at the center of one of the most disturbing investigations Hollywood has seen in years. But here's the part that should make every one of us uneasy. This wasn't some random act of violence. No signs of forced entry. No missing valuables. No struggle from the outside. Whatever happened that night, happened from within. And now Jake Reiner, the eldest son, the one most people barely noticed until now, is making headlines of his own. Arrested, allegedly complicit, charged not with the act itself, but something that might be far worse, knowingly helping cover it up. But why? Why would a man who had everything, legacy, platform, career, risk it all in the shadows of his own family home? Or was it risk? Was it something planned? Controlled? Was this about grief, betrayal, money, or something even harder to name? Let's take a breath. Because when a story like this breaks, the urge is to find a villain, point the camera, and say, there. That's him. That's the one. But nothing about this is that simple. And the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Let's rewind. Sunday evening, just after 8 p.m., the sun had dipped behind the Los Angeles hills. The Reiner estate, gated, immaculate, discreet, stood silent from the outside. No movement. No alarms. Inside, though, it was different. Police reports say the bodies of Rob and Michelle Reiner were found in the main living area, side by side. Multiple stab wounds. No defensive injuries. Which suggests they either never saw it coming, or they did, and didn't fight back. Now think about that. These weren't frail, helpless people. Rob was 78, yes, but still active. Sharp. Just last month, he'd given a keynote at a voting rights summit in D.C. Michelle? 70. But had just helped organize a major fundraiser for pediatric health. So what could make two smart, seasoned people like them freeze? Some say it was trust. Others say fear. One officer close to the scene reportedly told a source. They were looking right at their killer. They knew who it was. Let that settle for a moment. Now ask yourself this. Who do you let close enough to stab you? And not scream? This isn't a whodunit. At least not in the traditional sense. Police arrested Nick Reiner, the Reiner's youngest son, that same night. He lived in the guest house. He had a history, addiction, arrests, rehab, relapses. He was found at the scene, covered in blood. That's the easy story. The one that fits neatly. Troubled son. Isolated. Explosive. Police closed the file. Except one thing. It wasn't Nick who called 911. It wasn't Nick who met the officers at the gate. It wasn't Nick who warned them that someone should be a suspect. That was Romy Reiner, the daughter, just 27 years old. Filmmaker. Artist. A bit of a recluse. But she said something that cracked this story wide open. She said, "You're looking at the wrong brother." And just like that, everything shifted. Because while Nick was in handcuffs, Jake was already gone. Not fled. Not hiding. Just absent. From the estate. From the crime scene. From the story. But not for long. Jake Reiner is not a household name. Not in the way his father is. But he's known. Former news anchor. CBS affiliate in Los Angeles. Known for clean suits, clean stories, clean hands. The good son. Always poised. Always removed. Until now. Because something cracked. Within 48 hours of the murder, detectives obtained a warrant for Jake's phone records. What they found is not fully public. But it was enough. Enough to arrest him. Charge him with aiding and abetting. And begin painting a very different picture of the man many thought they knew. So again, why? Why would Jake Reiner, professional, presentable, private, be involved in something like this? Maybe he wasn't. Maybe this is all a terrible, cruel mistake. A family shattered, a reputation burned, A man in the wrong place at the wrong time. But, if that's true, why was there a burner phone? Why did he delete messages hours after the murders? Why did Romy single him out? And why, when police found the safe in Rob Reiner's private study, was Jake's name the only one listed in the coded ledger inside? This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Because buried beneath the blood, the grief, and the headlines, there's something deeper. A quiet rot. A fracture that didn't happen overnight. And when we come back, we'll take you to the moment it all began to unravel. Starting with the 911 call that should have saved them, but didn't. You know what's strange? The way stories like this slowly begin to untangle themselves. Not through press conferences, not through leaked court documents, but through tiny inconsistencies. Moments that feel just a little off. A neighbor says she saw Jake's car parked outside the estate hours before the murder. But Jake told police he was across town, having dinner with friends. A friend confirms the dinner. So that should be the end of it, right? Except, the restaurant's time-stamped photos don't match the time on Jake's own Instagram story. His post? Marked at 7:43 p.m. The restaurant's security cam says he left at 7:08. So where was he for those missing 35 minutes? Doesn't sound like much. Until you realize the 911 call came in at 8:12. 35 minutes in a city like LA? That's enough time to get to Brentwood. Enough time to walk through the gate he'd entered 100 times before. Enough time to say goodbye. Or something else. There's something chilling about families unraveling in public. Especially famous ones. They're supposed to be different, right? All the money. All the access. All the privilege. And yet, when it falls apart, it somehow feels even more violent. Because we bought into the illusion that they were better at holding things together. But you peel back just a little, and the pain is the same. Or maybe worse. We're told the Reiners were close. Dinner every Sunday. Family photos on the wall. Matching holiday cards. But here's the contradiction. If they were that close, how did no one see this coming? Unless someone did. Romy did. That much we know. And from the little she told officers in those first few hours, it sounds like she had known for a while. She just didn't know how far it would go. She told them Jake had been acting strange. Avoiding calls. Appearing suddenly, then vanishing. Conversations that felt rehearsed. Words that felt loaded. But what pushed her to speak out wasn't just the murder. It was what she found in her father's office. That part hasn't been made public. Not fully. But several sources suggest Romy came across something that night. Papers, notes, maybe a recording. Something that pointed not just to Nick's instability, but to Jake's intent. And that changes everything. Because motive? That's always the hardest piece to find. And when the motive lives behind closed doors, inside bloodlines and birthday parties and buried resentment, you may never really see it coming. Let's talk about Jake for a moment. He always stood apart from the others. Quiet, clean, intentional. Not a Hollywood guy, not like his dad. Not chaotic, not like Nick. Not visibly tortured, not like Romy sometimes seemed. He'd been a sportscaster, a political commentator, a voice for truth and balance, as he liked to put it. The kind of man who talks about integrity. The kind who signs emails with "Best, Jake." The kind you trust with your car keys. And maybe that's what makes this so hard to digest. Because the idea that someone like Jake could be involved in something like this, it forces us to reconsider what evil even looks like. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it calls you mom. Sometimes it texts you just hours before you die and says, "Hope tonight goes smooth. See you soon." And here's where the case splits in two. Because there are those who say Jake was manipulated, dragged into a storm created by Nick, his younger brother, unstable, impulsive, possibly out of his mind that night. But then there are those who say Jake orchestrated the whole thing. That Nick was the fall guy. That Jake, with his clean hands and steady posture, was the one who laid it all out. That Jake never expected Romy to speak. Now, you might be wondering, why would Jake do something like this? What could possibly drive a son to even consider being complicit, let alone active, in the murder of his own parents? We'll get there. Slowly. Because the motive isn't one thing. It's not a will. It's not just jealousy. It's not a single betrayal. It's layers. Wounds that never healed. Decisions that were never forgiven. And secrets that have been waiting to come out. And one of those secrets may have something to do with the safe. Yes, the safe. Because 2 days after the murders, Romy gave police a key. Not metaphorical, a literal key. She said she found it in a book in her father's study, taped to the inside cover of a worn copy of All the President's Men, a film Rob admired, a story about corruption, silence, and moral compromise. The safe had opened, built into the floorboards beneath his desk. What was inside? Authorities won't say, but here's what we do know. After opening that safe, investigators immediately changed the scope of the investigation. They began tracing financial records. They froze an account in Jake's name, and they requested access to Jake's burner phone, a device no one knew existed until that day. So let's take stock. 2 parents, stabbed to death. No forced entry, no struggle. 1 son, found at the scene, confused, bloody, possibly high. Another son, out to dinner. But timelines don't match. Messages are missing. And now, he's under arrest. And a daughter, quiet, watching. And then, one night, she whispers, "There's someone here who shouldn't be." You feel that? That shift? That's the moment when this stopped being a tragedy and became something else entirely. We're about to take you deeper. Into the first minutes after the call. Into the scene police walked into. And into the question no one seems willing to answer. What was Jake Reiner doing in Brentwood before the blood had even dried? It didn't sound like a panic. Not at first. The voice was low, flat, focused. 911, what's your emergency? A pause. Then a whisper. There's someone here who shouldn't be. The dispatcher leaned in, strained to hear. Ma'am, are you in danger? Click. That was it. Just those 9 words, then silence. But those 9 words would ignite a homicide investigation that would ripple through every corner of the Los Angeles elite. Because the address connected to that call wasn't just any house in Brentwood. It was the house. The Reiner estate. $13.5 million of gated privacy, manicured grounds, and legacy. Home to a man who once stood beside presidents, directed cult classics, and raised millions for civil rights causes. Rob Reiner. And the woman who stood beside him through it all, Michelle Singer Reiner. Quiet, sharp, strategic. If Rob was the voice, Michelle was the force behind it. But that night, they were just 2 names on a police blotter. Deceased. Stab wounds. No sign of struggle. Discovered in the main living room. Faces peaceful. Almost asleep. Too peaceful. Police arrived within 8 minutes. Lights off. No movement. Gate open. That detail alone set off alarms. The Reiners were notoriously private. That gate was never left open. Not even for deliveries. They found Romy waiting barefoot on the stone driveway, wearing an oversized UCLA hoodie. Pale. Still. One officer reportedly asked if she needed medical attention. She said nothing, just pointed toward the house. Inside, it was cold. Not temperature, energy. A chill in the air. That strange stillness that only follows after something irreversible. The officers followed the hallway down past the kitchen, past the wall of framed awards and honorary degrees. And then they saw them, Rob and Michelle, together, side by side. Blood pooled beneath the beige settee, but not chaotic. No overturned furniture, no broken glass, no sign of resistance, as if they knew it was coming. Here's where the story takes its first sharp turn. Because while one team of officers worked the scene, another was tasked with locating the Reiners' youngest son, Nick. He lived in the guest house, barely 40 yards from the main structure. He was found there, sitting on the floor, head in hands, blood on his shirt, his jeans, under his nails. He didn't resist, didn't speak at first. But when he did, he said something that made every officer stop cold. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Cryptic. But what does that even mean? Did he know something? Was he expecting something else? The arrest was immediate. 2 counts of first-degree murder. Simple enough. Except, back at the front gate, Romy was still sitting on the driveway, and she asked a detective something that threw everything sideways. Have you found Jake yet? He was here earlier. The detective paused. What do you mean he was here? She looked up, eyes glassy. He came by, around 7. Said he forgot something in Dad's office. He wasn't supposed to be here. I didn't think much of it. But now, she trailed off. And then, almost like an afterthought, he parked around back. You probably didn't see his car. And just like that, the focus shifted. Because Jake Reiner wasn't mentioned in the original call logs. Wasn't listed on the scene report. Wasn't even in the city. According to the alibi, he would give just hours later. But if Romy was right, if Jake was there that night, then why didn't he say so? Why disappear from the narrative entirely, until his sister mentioned him? Detectives returned to the scene the next morning, reviewed footage, checked cameras along the back perimeter. One angle caught it. A blurred image. SUV, dark-colored, pulling into the estate from the back gate at 7:12 p.m. No exit timestamp, and no footage of it ever leaving. So the question becomes, did Jake ever leave that night? If so, when? And why didn't he call 911 when his parents were murdered? Why let his brother